All right, we're back on. I think just making a note that we had a buffet lunch, so we grabbed our food and we're back in session.
Okay. We have completed, unless there's some other topics under transportation, those topics. So I'm proposing that we move to the 1 o'clock module, affordable housing and other housing topics. And as you flip that agenda page, you'll see there's a roster of important items. So let's start in on that. And, first one's zoning and density. Who wants to?
I think that was one of my topics. So last year, we sort of, I brought this topic up, that Kenmore is presently zoned for developers to build $800,000 townhouses, and that's not really affordable. And so my idea was, how could you change some zoning to encourage either cottage housing or senior housing or whatever? It might still be $300 per square foot. An 800 square foot house is going to cost less than a 3,000 square foot house. So, and I don't have a clue what the density would need to change to make those options possible for developers. But all I know is right now, what we're doing isn't going to get us affordable housing, except for like our TOD and other areas that we sort of addressed. So that was kind of my idea. And I thought last year we sort of talked about it. There was general council agreement that seemed like a good thing to discuss, but the docket was already full for 2018, and we sort of said, oh, it'll go in 2019, but then I didn't see it on the docket. So it feels like at least what I had hoped would happen for 2019 doesn't feel like it's likely to happen.
So on the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force that I co-chaired, one of the ideas that came up was to do something with ADUs, accessory dwelling units, what we already have in our code, but to go a couple steps further in that a group of cities getting together and getting plans drawn up that are pre-approved, that if somebody wants to build an ADU, they could get a set of plans from the city, and they're already pre-approved. We've talked with NUD. NUD is waiving connection fees if it goes after the main meter to the house, so it would be just part of the house, so that means the owner of the house would really have to be there. And so that would eliminate a lot of the expense with planning and development. The other thing was that we're looking at doing is to take certain areas and allow where we're zoned R6, R8, R4, to sort of changing the zoning in certain portions to allow a developer to come in and do just exactly what you're talking about, build 800 square foot houses. So you reduce the lot size and you put a maximum square footage size that could be allowed. The problem is there's not much success in telling developers what to do. So they're going to build what they want. But anyway, those are some of the plans that we looked at doing, and I think could be advantageous for the city to look at.
Okay. Brian and then Debbie.
I think it was last year's retreat that Mayor Baker brought up the idea of having a common plan for ADUs, and we've reached out to mybuildingpermit.com group, the East City Dev group, and try to get a whole bunch of buy-in on the other cities. And so there is other cities who are interested in putting together a basic plan that people could use to construct and get permits for ADUs. We reached out to Arch because Arch has gone through everybody's ADU regulations and compared them. And so Arch is involved and excited to be part of putting this together. So we're still in the earlier discussions with all the cities on how something like this would come about, because we're, of course, 13 or 14 different jurisdictions, 2 counties, and the other cities, of course, all the land use regulations are all over the place. So we are having these discussions and hoping to have some kind of idea soon.
I'm glad to hear that, because one of the things we were concerned with was getting the cities to work together and coming up with common things, so a developer going into one city knows exactly what he's going to face going into another city. So I'm pleased to hear that is happening.
So I think what Rob has passed around is the housing strategy, which is the policy document that council adopted a few years ago, and is providing the guidance on how to, what we can do on affordable housing. So, from my perspective, my focus is more on land use, and ADUs is one of the tier 1 priorities, and that is one of the recommendations that we'll be bringing forward on the docket for consideration. So ADUs, as well as doing sort of a recommendation on regional housing strategy, is also a strategy in Kenmore's housing strategy as well. One of the things that the mayor brought up about, smaller lots, it will be an interesting policy discussion for you, because if you remember a few years ago, council actually increased the minimum lot size in the zoning district. So that will be something that if you are interested in doing that, we have to take another look. But I can say that ADUs are something that we are recommending for consideration this year.
So to be fair, Laurie Anderson was the one that had the idea for a common set of plans amongst different jurisdictions. And Laurie has been working very closely with our planning commission. And so I don't want to think that it was my idea. It wasn't, it was Laurie's idea.
Okay, Stacey?
I do like the ADU idea, common plans. Just without knowing anything, I don't think I support reducing lot sizes or having a, maximum square footage or anything like that. I'm fairly passionate about keeping the feel of our residential neighborhood exactly what they are, which is I think what the residents really want. One reason why I do it that way. So that's just my thought.
Okay. Deborah?
Yeah, are there other, I remember the discussion from last year, it was my first retreat, about cottage housing. And are there other than reducing lot size and kind of compromising the feel of the neighborhood, are there other mechanisms to get cottage housing or even promoting, co-housing? There's other ways to get affordability.
Yeah.
And I wish, this was before my time, and I just recently reviewed it. Really recently. And so I don't see those kinds of things in here, and I don't know how to move that conversation forward, I guess.
Yeah, I don't either, other than us come to an understanding and get the planning commission to look at something. But there are only certain portions of the city that might fit with cottage housing or smaller footprint housing. One of the things is along 73rd Street or along 80th Street, where we've got critical areas where there's an opportunity to build maybe a concentration of smaller houses in a certain area. But I don't know about that. That's Debbie and Brian's area. But there's certain areas in the city that would be conducive to that, but that's just something we have to look at and decide on. There was just a bunch of different ideas that came out in this regional affordable housing task force, and those were just a couple of them. So
It is actually in the housing strategy. If you look at A1C, it's a tier 2 priority, and cottages and duplexes and small scale kind of housing is on the list.
So what does that, sorry.
So what that, I guess if we're looking at this, the housing strategy was put in there with priorities. So we were kind of going down the list and looking at tier 1 priorities seem to be the highest priority, or we get more bang for the buck, or it seems to make more sense. And the lower levels we would kind of tackle later. So we're going at this in sort of a logical, methodical way. But it's not to say that if there is interest or we think that this kind of cottage housing, for example, should move higher up the list, we can certainly do that in a council direction.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I feel cautious about the whole idea. It would represent a further increase in density and a change in character for the city. I suppose the first changes, and some of those are natural and or part of what people call evolution. Perhaps some of those we call de-evolution, but with increased urbanization, we moved from rural to the 40s and 50s, and then suburban housing, and then increased apartments, over the more recent time periods with increasing urbanization. Maybe this is a next step towards further urbanization with accessory dwelling units and more people living in these areas. And I'm not saying it's inevitable or something not to be looked into, but I feel cautious about it in terms of traffic impact, character of the neighborhoods for sure, and that increase in density.
David?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of issues at play here. First of all, is the Growth Management Act. They say we have to prepare to take so much density, there's nothing we can do about it. So one of the things we did was did that transit-oriented overlay where we can get some density along the 522 corridor. I think there's other areas. With Lake Point falling through, that was a huge number of units that potentially there could fill the gap that the agencies say that we need to plan for. As long as that's not developing, we have to look at other areas and other ways that we can plan for the density. And so, ADUs and some other higher density areas with smaller housing, might be a way to do that.
So I'm not saying there is a right answer. What I say, I care enough about affordable housing that I would like to see as many options developed as possible. And the land is a limited resource. Like that one developer that came, might have been named Chan or Chang, I can't remember, but he was developing the spot on, I think, 83rd. And right now, his best development is to maximize big units. And he said they actually cared. They actually looked at, could they take advantage of other things and put some more units in? It just didn't quite pencil out. So at what point could you change the zoning so it would pencil out? So you'll get more smaller units. So, because once the lots are all developed, they're gonna be that way for 30, 50 years. It's gone. You can't go back and redo this option that we might have. We're 6 square miles, we're never gonna get any bigger. We have an opportunity potentially over the next year or two to still direct some of the development. Developers need to make money. I totally understand that, and I want them to make money. But instead of building huge townhouses, could they do it with another option? And that's all I'm saying. If we give them no option, then we'll keep getting huge townhouses.
Nigel and then Brent.
Mandating large lot sizes is mandating affordable housing at this point in the city. And I think I agree with the mayor and Councilor Kirsten. I think there are probably areas in the city where we could look at some smaller lot sizes to allow more flexibility. So we're not just getting large single family homes, because that's not going to be the answer for a lot of people coming up, at least if housing stays where it is. On the affordability scale, we need to be giving people tools to look at other options. And I think smaller lot sizes might make sense on some kind of targeted areas along arterials in particular. I think, Mayor's talking about 7030. I think Simons and Juanita might be part of the discussion too. We already have apartments that were put in down Juanita that are kind of already part of that neighborhood too. So I'm in favor of making ADUs as simple as possible. I think those are that should be a slam dunk. Making sure we don't have parking restriction. We don't have a parking requirement for ADUs, and making sure hookup trees and everything else, and the permitting is as simple as possible. But I think we should be looking at trying to make the land use code a little bit more flexible for folks, at least in some areas that are near transit or near arterials, so that we can get a little bit more of variety of housing stock to meet different needs.
Right. And then Bill.
On the, if we go smaller lot sizes, unless we address the improvement size on the lot, I think you're going to get large townhomes no matter what. I think it's inevitable because the land costs and the development costs are so high. That's the only reason it makes it feasible. What you could do maybe is if you have smaller lot sizes in a zone or a particular area of land and you limit it, you said it can't be over 1,500 square feet. So what you've done is maybe you give the developer, they get a benefit by getting more units in because you've zoned it smaller, but the product they have to construct is smaller. And so that would be, because I don't see any way, if you don't address the improvement size, I don't see how you ever get to those small houses otherwise. So that's one of the things. And then on new construction and new development, and the one that really strikes in my mind, it would have been appropriate was East Lake Village, where you have all these 2-story with basement homes. It's that development out, I think it's East Lake Village, or East Creek Village. East Creek. It's right next to, just north of Brightwater, Twin Springs. And you have all these 2 stories with basements. And if there was a way, one way we could encourage it, that I think actually is a really proactive way to get it in the development side, is to make an incentive for builders to create a product that has an ADU in it. And I see it all over in other municipalities where builders are doing that. And there's clearly a huge market demand. But it's giving them that extra incentive to create an ADU in their large home. And then that way, that it's either works for extended families, renting, whatever it is, there's a lot of long-term benefit. So I don't know exactly where that incentive comes from, but I was did some research, and one of the, Crosscut had an article recently, and they talked about all these, it was just last month, they talked about all these different fees that they give 50% discount on the ADU permitting fees. And it's pretty much the whole slew of fees. And so that's one way to at least look at something. And then lastly, in Portland, they put out an ADU financing guide, which I thought was interesting. And it has a list of lenders, and it allows people to go there and just look at, they're not trying to sell, and it's got multiple lenders, but it's what their products are and what they can do to help finance. So it helps people that are considering it, at least if we were going to do something like a pre-planned, or a model set of plans, if you could also at least give them some guidance on something like that, might be beneficial as well. But I would do anything we can to help push us along the ADU route, because I think it's one of the easiest ways to address it without changing the character of neighborhoods.
I would say the one reason ADU, as I remember, was tier 1 is because it was pretty easy. But I just don't see a lot of people using it. So I don't see it as really helping the affordable housing issue, because I don't think enough of them will be built to meet the need. I think the need's huge, and I think ADUs will be minimum. And I don't want to take all the areas of the city and turn them into high-density cottage houses, but to say some limited areas, some areas that make sense, close to transportation, so you can get by with less vehicles, less parking. So a limited area, but right now I think the answer is I don't know enough to even say what my recommendations would be. So that was really my ask, is could the planning commission, could somebody spend some time thinking about this and analyzing this, getting developers in there who say, I looked at it and I could have gone this way or this way, but right now it doesn't pencil yet. But if you change it this little bit, you'd start getting a little more of this affordable, small, quality housing. So I couldn't actually tell you what I want. I just know I want more options.
Stacy? And then Joe.
Sounds like everybody's kind of talking about 1C, which is tier 2. Is that something that we were going to talk about flipping priority, or is that just kind of what we want to do next after ADUs? I'm trying to figure out where the conversation is. So, it sounds like what you just said, Milton, is pretty much consider all the things in 1C and figure out something else.
Right.
So
I guess if there was a specific proposal, would be to somehow get that 1C into some work plan somewhere, instead of just indefinitely, eventually we'll get to it. So a year ago, I thought it was going to kind of move up, but it didn't feel like in the last year it moved anywhere.
you're kind of wanting to move it to tier 1.
Yeah, I think that's really what I'm asking.
Okay.
Just for clarification, this is about single-family neighborhoods, right? That's what
Are there any
1C.
single-family neighborhoods along busy arterials? I don't know that I specifically.
Yeah, 73rd, 80th.
Yeah, so those are all single-family.
But that's what C says is single-family neighborhoods. So is that what you're thinking about?
I don't really care. I mean, I would like somebody to be thoughtful and say, where would it make the most sense in the city? And it might be, instead of saying single family areas, it might be where there's good transportation.
So would moving this to a tier one accomplish your ask, which is essentially, let's do something on this year to give you the options? Is that what you're at?
That would be my ask.
Okay. Joe, David, and Deborah.
Can anybody, let me know how much approximately these units might be worth in today's dollars to see if, how affordable they really are? And then secondly, in a general sense, would such developments or new buildings be subject to like the same critical areas, setbacks, buffers, open space requirements, so that instead of just cramming the heck out of every last little inch on that lot, we're still following our, whatever guidelines we do have for some preservation of open space and the rest?
Okay. David, Deborah, then Brian.
I guess my big concern here is that it is smaller housing, cottage-sized housing, independent unit housing. I'm not looking to have a whole bunch of townhomes be put in.
Right.
I'm looking for, because I'm seeing that starting to happen now, is that lots are being bought up and townhomes are going in single-family neighborhoods. And so I'd want to make sure that they were smaller footprint houses that would accommodate and that would be affordable in nature.
Some of the examples I've seen of cottage houses, they're 800 square feet.
What's that?
800
square feet, yes,
Single family.
yes. Not tiny homes, but smaller cottage homes.
Right.
Deborah, then Brian.
Yeah, I completely concur. I remember the discussion and I really would like to elevate this to tier one. And I just want to, for a placeholder, I don't know whether it's this part of the discussion, but I would also like to elevate the small units in multifamily housing. Maybe I'm not entirely clear, but for example, our daughter lives in a studio that's 392 square feet and it's perfectly adequate. I believe that would not be legal. But I'm not entirely sure. I believe that's under the minimum that we have, and I hope we can revisit that as well. And that also helps, I would think, a developer to make more money if they have more units in the
More
same.
units.
But yeah, so.
Brian.
I just wanted to clarify something that was said about the critical area and shoreline regs. So we are regulated by the state, so we can't deviate into those codes too much when it comes to letting people build within critical areas or within the shoreline. So that wouldn't be a concern. Shouldn't be.
Okay. Joe.
And anybody have a ballpark for how much these things might cost now?
We're roughly seeing construction prices of new construction at $200 a square foot for single family. And so 800 square feet times 200 square feet, you're looking at $160,000 compared to, now you're gonna test me, a 3,000 square foot house in the $800,000 range.
There is a scaling impact on that though, so you could expect a little higher dollar per square foot on that.
On the ADU.
On the little.
On the ADU, just because if you're building an 800 square foot versus 3,000 square foot. Oh,
So I would say, so one of my passions is helping elderly folks find a place to live. So a lot of their equity is in their house. So they live in these 3,000 square feet houses that's with two people, they don't need a place that big. If they could get a house, anything less than 300,000 compared to what they live in now, that's affordable. And the smaller houses that I've been renovating, like in Gold Bar and Marysville, are in the 300,000. So if you could produce some housing in the 250 to 300, compared to what's here now, that's affordable.
But if you could allow them to build an ADU on their property, they could move into the ADU and have the greenhouse.
There's just complexities in that, at least the way things are now, having tried it myself.
But so can I ask for a clarification? You said something, I just wanted, so you're saying you want the finished product at 300,000? I missed what you said.
So if you could get finished house for 250 to 300,000, that's affordable. It's not as affordable as, the 50% level, 35, all those other stuff we're talking about. But for a lot of older folks who are sitting in a $700,000 house, 250 is affordable. They can afford that. I have a lot of money left over for a lot of.
I don't think that's attainable. I mean, you can't even get a condo unit for
But-
250.
But I thought we just said that the math he did.
That's the math on the improvements, not the land and the development costs.
Well, that's the question. How many will you allow on an acre?
Right.
That's where the math all needs to come in.
Right,
Can you end up with something in the $300,000 range? That's affordable.
yeah, the largest price for a developer's in land, that's the factor that I think weighs the most in pricing. is
Sure.
Land cost.
So, yeah, with what Brent said, what would the price then be a little bit higher for ADUs then in the future?
Yeah, so,
How much would one, I'm trying to get a sense of how much one might cost.
I mean, a nice buildable lot in Kenmore right now, just assume nothing's on it, a regular, build a normal single, you're gonna, if it's a reasonably buildable lot, you're not gonna find it for less than 350.
The way things are zoned now, that's my point.
Right, no, but what I'm getting, no, but that's part of the story. So let's say you cut that in half, that doesn't mean you cut that land cost in half. You now, instead of 350, that lot that's half the size is now maybe 300 or 275. Then you add your improvement costs. So I'm not trying to, I love your idea, believe me. The economics, I think, are incredibly difficult to achieve a new cottage at a market rate, new construction of 250 to 300,000.
You're talking about, like, a lot of people are sitting on, they have no, a lot of old folks have no savings. They really don't have any investments. Their house is it.
But so with the ADU, so let's just take that as so let's say they live in the city and they want to stay in their property. Well, we have a lot of large lots. So if you could go and you had a financing guide and you said, oh, this lender, this is what they specialize in, ADU financing. So you go, you refinance, or I'm not even sure how it works. I just know that Portland, I was looking at it was quite impressive how it was organized. You call up the lender and you figure out, here's a way I can finance to build an 800 square foot detached cottage in my backyard that then I can rent off a house or whatever, there's all different, and live in the cottage, there's different ways of looking at it. Or maybe they can do it and their mortgage payment is half of what they're going to get for the rental of an 800 square foot cottage to rent it out. And maybe that's enough to close the delta on their mortgage debt service. So I actually think I think the ADU makes a lot of sense. It's just, we have to continually make it attractive for the citizens to understand how to get through the process, because it's quite daunting if you knew nothing about it.
Rob, then Joe.
Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
And of course, I mean this sincerely, thinking about the paradigm shift we've got going on right now with our baby boomers. That's what's driving the entire emphasis on elder care and elder issues. Maybe this just springs off the ADU idea and trying to help elder people into cheaper, better housing when they need to make that transition. Looking at some zoning or increase in elder care housing or nursing homes. That's a tangential, but I think idea that also goes to the issue.
Rob?
Yeah, let's write down Joe's comment. So tweaking the code is great. I think it's important, but let's think about downtown redevelopment for a second. So when it comes to downtown redevelopment, there's two kinds of cities. There's cities that zone for it and hope for the best, and then there's cities that take matters into their own hands, assemble property, and become the developer. Kenmore was the latter when it came to downtown redevelopment. We not only zoned for it, but we took matters in our own hand. We bought property. We made downtown redevelopment happen. All that investment you see in downtown wouldn't have happened if you hadn't taken matters into your own hands. We'd still have a dilapidated strip mall there. So one conversation on the affordable housing side that you haven't had yet is this direct assistance discussion. And given market conditions and how we can't always guarantee that even if we change the code, developers will do what we want them to do, what about taking matters into our own hands with Arch's help, what if we bought a piece of property? And I can think of at least one in downtown Kenmore that would be great. And we worked with Arch, and we put in a really high quality affordable housing project with Arch's help and grants and
I'd be in favor of that as an option.
Is it not?
Yeah.
So
There will be
look at
no
the
one
options.
size fits all.
Right, right.
I think it would be nice to have more data, but I think, or just numbers, to understand what that would entail, but I think that would be fascinating.
I think one of the problems with senior and affordable housing and seniors is the fact that people that are living in the 3,000 square foot house, that's much too big for them. They've lived there for the past 40 years. They shouldn't have to move away from their neighborhood. They shouldn't have to move away from their friends. There should be something available for them in the community where they live, so. Something like this, I think would be great.
Okay. Other comments, or Jeff?
Well, I just don't want to lose, I feel like we need to have some closure on this, and we talked about elevating C to a tier 1 and not necessarily limiting it to single-family neighborhoods. I think the goal is to get the small housing, a small single-family housing, or to at least explore, you know, if it is financially feasible, kind of lay that to rest. If it's not, okay, but I mean, find out more about it, and to have, ideally, planning commission do some investigation on that. Where are we at with that idea?
Nobody has it.
Have a thought.
Yes.
So the council sets the planning commission's work
Yeah.
program through the docket process. That's coming before you at the end of January. And so the recommendation that we have on there is ADU as the affordable housing topic for this year. And we're balancing that with, if I had unlimited staff and resources, I could do more. Part of the docket is going to be finishing things off that were started last year, including things that were started by council. You still have to adopt the regulations for the mobile home park project. So that isn't done. That's on your list. And on the planning commission, they're working through finishing the critical areas and shoreline update. So we picked ADUs because it was a tier 1. It had been raised by council. It's in other, like the regional affordable housing strategy that the mayor shared. It's in that document. It's a topic that's being looked at regionally by Arch, so we thought this seemed to be a really good fit to add to the work program for this year. It's not going to be a solution that's going to solve affordable housing, but it's something that we felt made sense and that we had time to do. So if you were interested in adding on, looking at cottage housing or clustered housing or other options, then I would be a little bit concerned about the timing to do that this year. But I would say if it is a high priority, then definitely put it on the list and make a recommendation for it to be on the docket for 2020. Or take off ADUs and switch it, but I think doing both is a challenge in terms of resource and time.
I think it makes complete sense, and maybe just teeing this up to, you know, right after. I also noticed a lot of things in tier 1 that, you know, have potentially more questionable. I mean, this was done obviously before I was on council, so I don't have all the background, but, you know, maybe have more limited value, smaller things. And I don't know whether those, I don't think they're on the planning commission docket, just smaller impact items, but yeah.
Stacy didn't know.
Yeah, I would like to leave ADUs for this year and have no problem putting this for like the next year work item. One thing that I don't know if we want to look at first that might be a smaller thing is just what's the state of the union in cottage housing? Because I feel like Shoreline tried it and then they stopped, or people stopped doing it. And I don't know if we want to put a whole lot of work on the planning commission when people just in general are, I like cottage housing, I like the idea. But I feel like there's a reason other than just making money. Maybe it is just making money. And anyway, maybe that might be step 1. Let's start tackling that, whatever it is figuring out why cottage housing isn't.
No.
I would agree. I wouldn't want this 1C to be put in front of the ADUs. So I'll ADUs first. And I'm patient. So if it has to happen in 2020, I'm okay with it. As long as it raises up, so at least gets in the on the screen that it'll come up maybe next year. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, to answer Stacy's question, I mean, I honestly think it's simple economics. It just is not, there's no economic incentive for a developer to construct it because it gets to land cost, I think, and it gets to, if you've got, let's just say a 3,500, 3,000 square foot lot, if you can build something that you can sell for 800,000, why would they not do that versus something they could sell for 400,000? There's no incentive not to maximize their profit. And so I think, because I can think of a number of different ones that I'm familiar with around the area, and it's not cheap housing. What they do is they build really high quality cottages because there's a market for that, but it's not necessarily affordable housing.
Nancy?
A friend of mine, years ago bought a cottage in what's called the Pine Street Cottage in Seattle. It was originally a bungalow court built in 1916, and so it wouldn't have been allowed to construct it under city code, but it was a renovation, and so they renovated these units. And she sent it to me because she'd seen an article that her cottage that she used to own is on the market. It's 420 square feet, and it's on the market for 425. It was nuts, but it's, it's nice materials.
They're really quaint.
Yeah.
They have a lot of character.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple things. One, consensus around keeping strategy as it is pretty much, ADUs this year, but elevating the assessment of cottage housing, what could be done for 2020.
And I'm not saying cottage housing is the only way, but
Right. Well, that's
changing density in some way to allow.
right. I think the other thing I did hear though wasn't why you instantly started focusing on the specifics of a couple of different approaches. If I heard you properly at the beginning, you're kind of only looking at what's the range of tools we have to accomplish that objective. And so the assumption is, and I'm checking this with you, Debbie, is that is the approach, would the approach of the planning commission and so on do that?
Yeah, I think you could put it in there. I think the most, obviously, if you want to make it broader, then you are saying, take a look at what the options are first and then come back with a recommendation rather than take a look at this specific tool. So it's basically the direction that the council gives on how they want this topic to be addressed.
Right. Right.
Because, and this wasn't even anything I was thinking of, but just this latest discussion, it got me thinking that, downtown Bothell, they have something called, I know they have the downtown urban core, then they have something, I think it's called DT zoning, downtown transition. And it's like a buffer zone between the more urban and the residential. And I'm wondering, not advocating, I actually hadn't really thought it through right now, but I'm wondering if part of that discussion may be, is that part of what we would want to consider at all? And maybe it is something that's not quite as dense as our downtown core or TOD, but it's more dense than just R6. Just a thought.
Part of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's something, I don't know, just, I have nothing more to add.
All you experts get creative.
What do we know?
Yeah, I get it. I think what I'm getting is that you want to do more, you want to be flexibility. You might be willing to open up the box on density, probably less opening up the box on single family, although that would be something to check. That's sort of the general message I've been hearing.
Okay. You hear that? And so, and that'll be this year, next year.
Correct.
But will be
Next year.
contained within the planning. Okay.
So, council directed us to have a developer panel come, and we had it scheduled last fall, but got postponed. And does that ring a bell, Debbie?
This was a TOD panel, so the question was, you wanted a TOD panel, and we were getting ready to put one together, and then there seemed to be a little bit of surprise about what's this all about, so we backed up on that.
Okay. But I think in 2019, we could do what Milton was talking about and have some experts come at a planning commission meeting and talk to the planning commission. Not necessarily saying they have to go full throttle into it in 2019, but maybe mid or towards the end of 2019, with that developer panel to come and talk about what works and what doesn't. And not just TOD, but minimizing lots, or reducing lot sizes, reducing square footage, those little types of options.
That would be great. I would say if they're gonna come speak to the planning commission, it would be nice for the council to be there too, just make it a joint meeting, just because there's probably a lot of really good information that would come out of that.
Is that something the council would like to see happen in
Yes.
2019?
Yes.
2019?
Just, it doesn't necessarily mean we're adding that to the workload, but we're starting the discussion. And one just quick reminder, we are doing 3 things affordable housing related in 2019. We're doing we're writing the code for the mobile homes. We're doing ADUs, and we're doing MFTE and TOD.
Right.
And that's multifamily tax exemption in the transit-oriented district. So those are 3 things that we are doing.
Busy. A lot. Okay. Are we ready to move to the next? And I'm going to assume that we've talked about some of the things that's on this list already in this conversation, because I do see ADUs there, so I don't know if there's something different with that, but let's just go down the line. Church, back.
One more.
I'm sorry, yes.
Is that, I know I don't speak for all of us, but the character of single-family neighborhoods, I think is still important to us to preserve. We want to find places and put the density where it fits, but we still want to preserve the character of our single-family neighborhoods, so. Just want to make sure that was in there.
Okay. I thought I kind of heard that as a bottom line in a couple comments that were made, so I think that's a good thing to punctuate. Okay. Church back, lot zoning, Deborah.
Right, and Anya with Lutheran, I know, has talked about a zoning issue that prevents them from utilizing their back lot in a way that they would like to create affordable units and or potentially some shelter units, working with Compass Housing, for example. I don't know the specifics of what that would take, and that's why it's here. It's a question.
David.
So the question I have is that spot zoning. Are we zoning a particular property?
That's the question.
And,
Yeah.
I feel like given the zoning around it, and I could be all wrong, but if we change the zoning for that one property, we're only changing that zoning for one property, and to me, that's spot zoning, so.
Tim,
Brent and then Nigel.
So is that, I mean, why, and I don't know, but why would this be different than if somebody asked for a variance on a zoning issue for a specific piece of property?
Do you mind if I explain the situation?
Always a good place.
So they own quite a bit of land, and my understanding is that's R12, so it's already R12, plus you can get up to R18 with affordable.
Right.
So that's pretty good density anyway.
I didn't realize it was.
So she can do that under current zoning. And I've never spoken to her about this, so are they wanting even more density than that?
Again, I don't know. Okay, so you have not had a conversation with her. Okay.
No, I haven't, but what I took of it was the cost for the project would be too much. You'd have to do frontage improvements, you'd have to pay impact fees. We were talking, those could be really substantial. I didn't understand it as it wasn't.
So our code allows exemptions from impact fees for affordable, but yeah, there's still the frontage improvements and stuff.
So I guess could we ask that there be a conversation about, I just to explore it, that's all.
Okay.
Is that feasible to do?
Conversation with who, just
Well,
on in?
with the property owner about what's,
What they
what,
want. I don't even know
well,
what they
about, are there
Right, that's what we
barriers
need to
for
figure
them
out.
to use the existing code to create affordable, is there something that they need to create affordable housing?
Did they come forward?
Well, they've talked to
a few of us.
multiple
Okay,
they've
people,
talked
but
to
just
a
not
number
the
of us.
staff, I guess, yeah.
But who's the property owner? Is that the
I
church
don't know,
board?
it's the
Is that
church, I
the
think,
church board? Or-
Well, she has
She
direction from
represents.
her board
Yeah.
to try to make this happen, so.
And they have willing partners, so I mean, is it possible to just open up a conversation about, you know, are we creating a barrier that we just don't know about, or, yeah, that's all,
Our goal is to increase affordable housing. We need to look at all options.
yeah.
I think the first step is we just reach out to her and sit down and have that discussion.
That's
See what the
exactly.
concerns are.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right,
I mean,
okay.
But I think it needs to be clarified,
Yeah. I mean, I could
homeless
see us,
housing or affordable housing.
they're looking at affordable. I could see
Yeah.
us looking at, I could see us, working out a development agreement with them instead of rezoning and the public benefit is affordable housing. I mean, we could work something out. So. But I think staff needs to get a better idea of what exactly the barriers are.
So the to-do will be for staff to reach out to who?
So the property
Anya?
owner, Anya
Reach out to the
represents,
pastor of the
yeah.
church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do I?
This next one was mine as well.
Okay,
Stackable
stack-
units.
stackable units.
So this is something, modular units, modular stackable units that, I know King County is involved in, CXCL was involved in. It may, or I can't remember if Anya, because this was another thing on her list of interest. Are there, I believe this is relative to homeless housing, but I might not even know whether that's true.
So
But it's
took-
another option.
I took Anya up on they did a tour of one of these. There's a church in, a Lutheran church in Edmonds that
Yes.
is kind of getting rid of some of their property and building these. And they're essentially modular units that are built on site somewhere else and then trucked out. They are way cheaper on a square footage basis because they're built somewhere else. And then they can be, I can't remember the exact numbers, but like one of them might be 170 square feet. And you can connect two of them and you can connect up to four, and you can stack them up to four tall. Really high quality construction, really great, thoughtful, small living spaces. But it is an interesting thing, and they are going forward with a project in Edmonds that is going to be really interesting to see how that kind of works out. That might be what she's thinking about for her project too. I don't know.
I don't know.
but-
I guess the question here is, would our regulations in any way prohibit that kind of building, I guess is the right word, but construction? Yeah,
The land use regulation probably wouldn't prohibit, that really just talks about the density requirements and types of units. But when you get into the building and fire codes, they have a minimum dwelling unit sizes. And so there may be some issues in the building code that they could meet.
is that our building code or somebody else's that's imposed on us?
It's, the city of Kenmore has adopted the Washington State Building Code, and we make edits to it every 3 years. We're gonna skip this year. Next year, we're gonna edit it. It is something that we can look at if it is an issue.
Well, I would love that to be looked at also with the topic that I brought up earlier, which is because I think that's a minimum size issue as well, as just the minimum size issue on just a regular unit. It may be all the same discussion. So if that's possible to tee that up.
Where was this to be built?
The one
Well, anywhere. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Do our regulations prohibit this kind of building? Modular units, small modular units, because it's super affordable.
Yes, I can't remember this per square footage basis. I think it's like 2/3 or half the price of traditional on-site construction. And the build quality is really impressive. I mean, it's something to look at.
But at 172 square.
Well,
feet, that's a tiny
I'm
house.
quite, again,
These
this
are-
is 6 months ago. and
These are,
probably
it's
off.
like multifamily. It's within multifamily. It's not standalone.
And you can put a couple of them next to each other and have a bigger unit. I probably have the numbers wrong because it's been 6 months, so.
Milton.
Kind of a related question, what's allowed and what isn't, concerning the ADUs. So I looked up last night, you can get 1,000 square foot, mobile home for $54,000. That's $50 a square foot. So, but I don't know, is that allowed or not allowed? I don't have a clue what's gonna be allowed as an ADU. If I have to build a $250,000 house as an ADU, that's not gonna be affordable to me. But $54,000 mobile home is affordable to me.
I think that's a very different conversation though, because a mobile home, we're talking about character of a neighborhood.
Right.
That does change, that changes a lot on the character aspect. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Right.
Our code currently allows mobile homes to go on residential properties as long as it looks and feels like a stick-built regular home. So it has comp roofing or comparable roofing to a house you could build, siding and a foundation. So there is a possibility that you could build a mobile home that you couldn't even tell the difference between what a house looks like.
Can I ask you a question on that? So would, for instance, that home that's on, it's almost across the street from the library. You know which one I'm talking about? It's a manufactured home of some sort. At least it looks like one. Would that qualify as meeting our code from what you can, do you know which one I'm talking
No,
about?
I don't. Is it new?
Been there about 20 years.
Okay.
I remember I was surprised when I was surprised when they put it there because I thought, wow, that's an odd spot for it. But I'm just curious if that meets our code.
The black metal fencing around it.
I don't recall, it's kind of a,
I can take a look and let you know.
yeah, anyway.
Okay.
But on stackable units, talk to the Lutheran Church also, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, the stackable units, I think, was more just not knowing whether we allow them. We allow something like that. But it may also be something that I'm looking at. I don't know. So, sounds like.
So the question that you're asking staff to do is answer that.
Yes,
So that might mean looking into what it is and then making a determination if
Yes.
you could.
Thank you.
Allowed or not allowed present.
Right, because that's what you want to have happen.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you do, Jim. All right. So that, there's a momentum for that?
It sounds like maybe checking with the city of Edmonds, who would have been permitting.
Well, that might be what you do, but I think what Michael's looking at is there other people other than just one person that's interested in this?
Or is it similar to the last conversation, you just added on to it, if it's the same people and you're going to Edmonds? David?
I would have a lot of concern as to where. Because that stackable units, it has real potential to change the character of our entire
So
city.
it's multifamily.
It'd be in
Yeah, I know.
multi-family, so
But
you're
still-
already talking about, yeah. Well, but I mean, I guess the question is, can we explore it? Are you interested in exploring?
Joe?
I'd like to at least see it, yeah, I don't have a good enough understanding of what it looks like and how it functions and all.
So the proposal would be that staff would answer two questions. What is it?
Yeah.
So you'd have that, and then you would have, and based on that, you would take a look at your existing regs and codes and go, we can do it, we cannot do it. If we wanted to do it, this is what we have to do, maybe, I don't know.
Exactly.
The other concern I would have is labor. I mean, if these are built somewhere else to get rid of labor costs, you know, what is that gonna potentially do to labor here in our area? And jobs to build, so I would be concerned about that.
Orlando.
Right.
I think they're constructing Vancouver and Truck, but
Vancouver, Washington.
it's
Okay.
called blockable.
Is, Rob,
What's it called?
Blockable without a C, so BLOKABLE. I guess Paul Allen's behind it somewhere. The last one.
Was.
What if we did this? What if Brian looks into what our kind of code allows and then if it doesn't allow it, what would it take for us to change our code? Have them come and give a report about that.
yeah, after knowing what it is, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what was proposed process, is that cool?
Yeah, it's okay. Is that okay with you, Brian?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we got a few on that, thank you. Okay, moving along, I'll make an assumption here, but could be wrong, that we talked about ADUs? Okay, less expensive housing stock, we seem to be talking about that, but is there something other than that Deborah?
I have just a little question about this. Again, having just reviewed this recently, the strategy plan, are we, toward the end, there's a whole monitoring section and it doesn't have a tier rating or, I mean, could we clarify at some point what of those things we are doing? I guess it would be, I guess I would put in a plug for having some sort of annual count of various kinds of affordable options. And to kind of do that monitoring, at least at that level. So I just wasn't sure what of these we are doing.
Deb, any thoughts on that? Debbie?
Looking at this, so I guess this would be looking at, there are three sections on monitoring actually. So one is monitoring housing issues and how then, once we monitored them, how would that then translate into a work program item if it's needed? And number 3 is monitoring of previous city efforts. So that one would be looking at what we've done and how they're working. So
It's the first,
so it's the first one.
yeah, the land supply and the affordable.
Um,
Is the one I was thinking.
Okay.
But,
So we have a lot of background data in the comprehensive plan. There's an affordable housing element in the comprehensive plan, so that's where a lot of the data lies. ARC is also a resource that we use to kind of track what's going on in the region, and they kind of help us track the affordable units that are in Kenmore and ongoing. So we monitor it that way. We don't. I guess if you're asking, do we generate a deliverable? Then no, we don't. I'm just thinking that's probably where you were going.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. I mean, it's like, to me,
You want a
this is a dashboard. I mean, this is like,
Okay.
if we think this is an important priority, get it up there in front of us, so that we have some accountability around it. We council.
So can Arch produce a dashboard for us once a year?
I can ask them. I think that's what, if that's the
It
ask,
is.
then we need to
I
figure
suppose
out if that is, or the information, if this needs to be gathered in a different way.
Okay. Okay. Ready to move on? Tree houses within residential, town houses.
There's some.
I'll take
I
one.
just watched the show.
We're
It's
going
great
next.
show.
Not
Sorry.
necessarily.
That's one.
There's some pretty expensive.
Might not be approved in our code.
Yeah, I was gonna say, moving into code analysis, townhouses within residential areas. Have we talked that out?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
How? So,
That, when we were starting talking about the affordable housing and whatever, and going with townhomes and not to change the character of our single-family neighborhoods, there was general agreement on that when we were talking.
Stacy.
Second.
take care.
Stacy, no, go ahead.
So we had the school district impact fee, and we tried to have townhomes be kind of classified as a single-family home, but then that got challenged. And out of that was a, hey, do we want to limit townhomes in our single-family areas, because now maybe developers will build townhomes there since they get to get out of the school impact fee. And I would be in favor of limiting townhouses the same way we did apartments in single-family zones. To keep the character
Right.
short.
But certainly the exemption is, I will certainly want to discuss.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm
I mean-
interested in exploring it.
I mean, I guess there's two issues there. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, yes.
Is there a process underway to do that at this juncture?
Are townhomes allowed in single family?
They are.
Yes.
So what's
Conditional use.
Good see. Go ahead. Brett, please.
I'm trying to figure out, the only way anybody would build a townhome is if a single-family detached house wasn't allowed. Isn't it? I mean, because of your site constraints.
That 170 right now.
Well, the reason that we made townhomes count as single-family houses, one of the reasons were because of the size and location or so I know we were talking about it at the time.
I'll defer the rest of my comments because Brian has.
Let me say something. So currently, all the townhomes we're seeing under construction are in a multifamily zone. I tried to do some research and bring up an example of some that were in a single family zone. And we don't have any right now under application, any single families, and I don't think that we've had any of townhomes. We had an application at one time, and I don't think it got built. But the theory is you do it, like Debbie said, through a conditional use. And so through that conditional use, you're making sure that the touching, the feel and everything of that neighborhood looks just like a single family residential area. So it's not, you're not plugging in a townhome in the middle of between, the rest of the neighborhood. It's kind of looking at the overall plat subdivision altogether.
Okay. Milton, David, Nigel.
So as you go up 68th and you turn the corner, it becomes 202nd. There's like 4 or 5 houses that they built right on the corner on the east, between there and the wetlands. Those sure look like townhouses to me. They're big, huge houses, really close together. Is that a,
Those are
is that a
Those are
multi-family area?
detached homes, yeah.
single family.
That's single family. Aren't they like huge townhouses in single family zones?
No, those are single family, single family zone.
They just look like
How
townhouses.
close are they? Yeah, they look like townhouses. Townhouses just being 2-story, I mean, big, they're really teeny tiny lots.
When they're typically attached.
Attached.
But does townhouse have to be attached then?
Yeah,
I believe so.
By definition.
Yeah, by definition, a townhome is 3 or more units and they're attached on at least 2 sides, so they're not stacked on top of each other. So
Okay, so these are
houses,
separate.
0 lot lines.
David, then Nigel.
Yeah, 170th, right across from Rhododendron Park. I had a developer come in and buy 2 lots. It's building 11 townhomes.
That's multifamily. It's
Is
either,
that?
yeah, it's either
It
R12,
is.
R18. That's the one that was mentioned.
Yeah, so the concern I have with the traffic, which has gotten better with the signal improvements, thank you very much for that. It just dumps so many more cars onto that road that's already challenged.
This kind of seems a lot like the conversation passing an ordinance to ban apartments in single family that we did a couple years ago, which wasn't a problem. That was a kind of a contrived problem. This catches me the same sort of thing. This is a problem. This is a solution looking for a problem. I don't think we need to be spending staff time or council time passing an ordinance for something that isn't happening and isn't going to happen. So.
Okay, Stacy?
I agree.
Okay.
So I didn't know anything about how big of a problem it was, and it sounds like it's really not a problem, so. I agree.
So,
What's the other issue?
just listening to the conversation though, I think the original question was, does your zoning allow for it?
It
Right?
sounds like it does
Does, it
allow,
does.
but it would have to be a conditional use permit, and it would have it wouldn't be just, all of a sudden next door I have like this huge townhouse development in my single family neighborhood. It would be thoughtful.
That's correct. So conditional use isn't an outright permitted use, it has a special review process that goes through. And part of that is making sure that it all fits together.
I feel better about that.
Okay. Debbie?
And also, townhouses don't increase the density in single family. So if you have an R4, the density is still 4 units per acre. Townhomes just mean it's a different kind of housing that you put on a lot.
David?
So then the other issue is the tax,
The what?
is the school impact fee.
Yeah, that's on.
So,
That is next.
That's-
There we go.
Monday night,
So we're being appealed. We're having an exec session about
On Monday night? Being appealed. Okay. On this,
it. Impact fees on townhomes are being appealed.
Oh.
And we're having an exec session about it.
So does that mean we
Wait,
should
did
not
that get on
talk
the
about it?
agenda?
Or what do you tell
It's
us?
at the end of the meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay, I did see that.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
can't say anything then?
so are you suggesting we not talk about it here?
No?
I think we can talk about it a little bit. Rob would probably smack me right now.
Well, I guess my concern is if these are being sold as townhomes, they are property owners that have them. Therefore, they shouldn't be exempt. I mean, that's just my own opinion. Yeah, that's it.
So is this gonna be
We
talked about in
talk about
executive
that
session?
I think,
Yeah.
so
On Monday.
I have opinions, but I feel like they would push the limits of what we should talk
Okay.
about, so.
Would it be okay if we talked about it?
Yeah.
Because things
Yeah.
go-
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that'd be better off for you.
That's good.
So school district impact fees, is that,
That's what we
the one.
discussed.
that was it? Okay, all right. Well,
we're not.
yeah, we're not,
I know.
we talked about it because we're not talking about it, so.
Can I say one thing about those that's not townhome related?
Please.
That is, the school, you adopted 10,000 for single family, 0 for multifamily. And now the school district wants you to increase it to 16,000.
For single family.
16,000 for single family and 1,800 for multifamily units. So, is that something you want us to bring to you? You want to wait a couple of years, see how the 10,000 works out? You want to think about it and give us direction in a couple of weeks?
Deborah Hilton.
Well, I guess these kind of ties the two things together a little bit for me, but I mean, so this is what they want us to do. Do we have any latitude of saying,
Yes,
how
we
about
can say that.
townhome 5,000? Or, I mean, can we split hairs on that? Or, okay, so we do have some latitude. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would like to have it brought to us at some point, but I don't know when.
Hilton?
Yeah, mine was similar. I'd like to split the two
Yeah.
issues. So single family, I'd be happy to not increase it, but to add something for multifamily, I'd be okay with that.
I don't,
Yeah, I was dumbfounded when we weren't doing multifamily the first time we had this discussion with the school district. So, yeah, I'm happy to have a discussion about
Kids still live in those.
and possibly adjust it to the family.
David?
I think the discussion is perfectly warranted. I would be in favor of raising single family or raising any of them until we figure out what we want to do with everything.
Okay, well, Brett.
I absolutely would not be in favor of increasing the single family. I don't even want to have a discussion. We just implemented the fee. And we went through a big thing on it, but I am also in favor of the multifamily aspect, and it's a reasonable amount.
Stacy?
Yeah, what he said. Really, exactly that.
Well, ironically, I think one of the things that came out of that task force that the mayor is on is one of the possible things to consider is just reducing impact fees generally could help affordable housing. That was one of the things that came out of that task force. So it's kind of ironic that we're also talking about adding or increasing.
That's why the development farm will be helpful.
So I'm hearing yes, except for two folks. Yes, had the discussion. Two said, no, I don't want the discussion, and they don't,
They could split it between the single family and the multifamily.
okay,
We're all happy to have a multifamily. I think.
Joe,
Yeah, I'd just like to hear the district's rationale without committing anything.
David,
Yeah, we have the multifamily tax exemption available to us for houses. Will we have something similar for affordable units in a multifamily? Yeah, can we make that exemption for multifamily for the school impact fees?
That's the discussion you'll have to have with the school district, when you'll have, that's what you'll have to say, when you're gonna set policy,
You can do that.
you can do that.
Yeah, and I think it would be important that we have that ability, so that discussion needs to be had.
Brian?
What was the question?
We have multifamily tax exemptions available to us from the state. Can that carry through then on the impact fee or for the school side?
And the answer is yes.
To promote affordable housing.
Okay, so sometime in 2019, we'll bring forward the school district's request to you and get the rationale, and then you guys can decide what to do. Okay?
okay. Winter shelter.
Oh, this was mine. As if we haven't talked about this enough. And this can certainly go toward the end of the year and potentially into 2020. I'd like to see the winter shelter folks do some thinking about what we said was our rules about this, and see if they can come up with a creative solution, and if they can't, I'd like to revisit it around two issues. Just one is, potentially finding a zone where we would feel comfortable with the type of thing that they were proposing, and/or helping support a few extra hours in the day so that their end time didn't coincide with bus stops. So in other words, ending at 9:30 instead of 7 AM, something like that. But again, I'm happy to be patient as long as it's kind of teed up at some point for discussion, maybe a year out, so that they can maybe come up with a creative solution first.
David, then Rob.
So winter shelter, is that what we're calling low impact housing now? Or low impact?
Low barrier, yeah,
Low barrier?
I mean, whatever the name is, it's what they
Okay,
propose.
so
Yeah.
low barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
certainly
emergency
have
shelter.
concerns with that, because what we've seen from this one is that instead of being bussed out in the morning, they just shifted their location. So I'm still quite concerned, and I certainly wouldn't entertain a motion to get rid of a warrant check, especially
Yeah,
since
I'm
we're
not
hanging
just-
out in our
I'm-
town,
Yeah,
so.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about bringing it up for the express purpose that I said those two issues. Different zone and/or different hours.
And I just want to make sure you know that as your new ordinance is now written, the low barrier shelter is not going to be able to come back in 2019. Do you guys all understand that? You know that?
Yep.
In their current configuration. The way they do business
The
now,
way they
that
do business.
particular, essentially vendor, provider of winter shelter would not be able to.
But what's
That
their
does
funding?
not-
What's their funding? It's not like city partners, it's their funding.
As we know,
That's right.
their funding has some strings attached.
But I mean,
They are flexible strings, so we're giving them an opportunity to see if they can work with their funders and be creative in other ways. I want to give them an opportunity to do that. And then if that fails, and they, after a year or so, we still don't see any opportunity for emergency winter shelter, I would entertain coming back to the issue. But if I don't have any support, that's fine.
Rob, and then
I just want to make sure though that you know that our ordinance does not fit the definition of low barrier.
There is no definition. We
Yeah.
were expressly told, and I know this
Yeah.
personally, that there is no hard definition. That's the issue.
But the key is background checks, and we're requiring background checks. And so if there's any low barrier shelter that doesn't want to have background checks, then they can't come to Kendall.
Correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
all right.
I don't, based on your two criteria, I don't see it as something we need to plan for. I think it's on them. We created the policy. There's a policy in place. If there's something they want to work, then they need to come to us and figure that out. I don't see that we need to be proactive on anything else at this point.
Right.
So I would say, I don't see it as a work plan item at all. I would say if they want a change, or they're going to change the way they do it, then that's on them, or they need to come to us and ask us to change the bus. I don't know.
I guess I'd like us to eventually be able to figure out a way to have emergency winter shelter. So I don't know whether that just means kind of
That's on them.
revisiting it in a year and saying, kind of like dashboard, like, where are we at? And just asking the question in a year, and that would be fine with me. I mean, that's why I'm saying I don't know if it's a work plan item or just a tickler on the list for a year from now to say what happened to
So-
this.
I'm hearing exactly the opposite of that from you. I'm hearing you say, I don't want the city
This
doing
time-
anything with this. If they want to come to us, then, and we'll take up whatever they want to bring to us to take up. I'm hearing you say, we will put it on our to-do list at some point in time of week. We will proactively come back and visit whatever. So that's what I'm hearing in this
No, that's
conversation.
exactly right. If
Yeah,
I may
you're
just expand on that, this time last year, one of the things I wanted to talk about at their feet was a homeless shelter policy. We created that
Right,
policy,
yeah.
the policy is in place. I feel like our part of it is done at this time unless somebody comes to us and is asking for something, or we see some obvious need of tweaking. But
Well,
that's how I would do it.
I think That's a fair point. We did do what, they could come to us to ask for either funding
Right.
or changes to zoning or look at different zones or, yes. I think- Good point.
Okay, Joe?
I think when the need arises, or if we want to get out ahead of it, one thing that has affected me, I had a very close call with handling the whole issue, but we might need a legal analysis as to thinking, is it more beneficial to have a more flexible policy with the low barrier shelter because of that Ninth Circuit opinion that said that City of Boise, I think it was, could not criminally prosecute people essentially for sleeping on the street. Would it be more, if you take it to its extreme, if you say, all right, we're gonna have a low barrier shelter, here it is. This is what we've got. Then under that Supreme Court analysis, is it allowable at that point then to say, all right, we cannot have people erecting tent cities, we can't have people living on the sidewalks, we are gonna move them out civilly at the very least, and or, I don't say for prosecuting them criminally, but maybe we have more leverage to move them out civilly. Maybe we're not there to the level of the difficulty of the homeless encampments and tent cities would prove in Kenmore, but I think it's worth bearing in mind as to how we get a legal analysis on whether or not more flexibility with a low barrier shelter would assist us later.
David and then Brett.
Yeah, my understanding from analysis that was done with that Supreme Court decision is very specific, very limited to that particular, and it has to do with jailing somebody for violation. I don't think we're talking about putting anybody in jail. I think we're just trying to protect the safety of our community, so I don't see the relationship.
No, you're right.
At least lawyers,
Yeah.
have the ones that have spoken to me about this in the different communities I'm on, there doesn't seem to be a nexus there, so.
So I understood it somewhat as the mayor just described it, but I also know exactly what you're talking about. And I think there may be a point at some time where if homeless issues continue to grow at the rate they are, that we are going to have to revisit some of our policies. And if we have to revisit those policies, then what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, because we'll want to do it in the context of the entire problem.
With global warming, there's not gonna be any cold winters anyway.
There you go.
Not in Seattle.
There'll be a one.
I would say forever the optimist, but I don't know if that's.
Winter is coming.
Alaska will still have a problem with it.
Okay,
I just don't want to drag this out, so maybe I shouldn't make this comment.
right.
I'm done.
Okay, let's move on.
Comment on your comment.
I'm just worried that come September or October this year, there's gonna be a crisis and there's gonna be a lot of pressure on you to suddenly change the code or something, we're all gonna be scrambling.
Change the, can you
With
say a little
regard-
more, please?
What's that?
Change the code around the shelter.
I'm just worried that we're gonna get this fall and the advocates for a low barrier shelter are gonna really put some pressure on and say, what? Oh, we gotta have a place, they don't have a place.
No.
And they're gonna, and we're gonna drop what we're doing and scramble and
Milton and then Deborah.
My bigger concern is certain entities will do it against our code. And then we'll have to think about who we want to enforce it. That's my concern. Wouldn't look pretty.
Deborah?
That's a concern. I actually am comfortable with where we're at. I mean, we deliberated a lot on this issue. That's where we're at. I also, many of the applicants are not from Kenmore and are providing services outside of Kenmore to Kenmore. And there's plenty of opportunities in other jurisdictions that these other advocates come from to do this kind of work. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the role that we have played and may in the future at some point.
David?
Yeah, I share Milton's concern in that there are maybe groups that just do this anyway. And the problems that could ensue.
Anything else on this one? Okay. We had, these words were mentioned in prior discussions, but I'll go right to tax exemptions. Is that a more targeted, expanded discussion? Seems small. Yeah, I can look up the product if you'd like me to.
Probably be me again.
And that's not in the text, that's something
I think it's under housing.
Is that the 12-year?
Might be the MFTD.
Right.
So this was Deborah.
Brian has a
It's not on
memo.
my list,
Right.
so I don't think it's. Yeah. I mean, if it's me, it's not, I don't. have
Okay,
it,
well,
so, Yeah.
It doesn't really, doesn't jump out.
So is this like the
Probably
chart and
not,
everything?
no.
Yeah.
Memo?
That's later, isn't it? That's later.
Okay, involvement of developers and advisory groups, I know that was
That is
yours.
fine, yeah. Yeah, I was just very aware that, I don't know how you say their acronym, North Urban Housing something, NUSHA. Yeah, that they were meeting with citizens about affordable housing in our city hall. We were completely disconnected from that effort. A year ago, I raised the idea of having a citizens advisory group around affordable housing, including shelter and mobile home parks. And it kind of fell flat. I think I was under the assumption that some folks in the community were going to move forward with developing a community group that could potentially be looked to for information and advisory capacity. That didn't happen either. So I guess my question to this group is, it's kind of the second part of that, we're already having a developers forum, is, can we more formally work with NUSHA that's already got some traction around this, or at least recognize them or listen to what they're learning. It feels like we're very disconnected from something that could be useful to us. So I just put that out there.
Right?
I don't know how to.
So,
It hasn't been over here.
What's the name of this group?
North Urban Human Services Alliance.
Yeah, but they've been pretty focused on housing of late.
Homelessness mainly this last year, yeah.
Okay.
So they start off in Shoreline and they're slowly expanding across kind of North King County with membership and meetings and things like that, which is why they're holding meetings in Kenmore City Hall and talking about homelessness and experience of it and things like that. I'm not sure what the plan is for next year, but.
So is your question to the group, does the city want to reach out to them and proactively engage with them, or what?
Yeah, or at least maybe have them, at the minimum, maybe have them present to us what they've learned so far, what their plans are. I just feel wholly disconnected from this group that's actually meeting right here, talking about similar issues with our citizens. It just feels very disconnected. Yeah.
David?
Yeah, I mean, I've had experience with that group for a number of years,
Okay.
in that they are North Seattle Human Services Group. They do Shoreline and Lake Forest Park. They've been trying to get us to contribute to it, but we're on the east side that have our own programs. And so that's the way I view that group, is they're slowly trying to expand and move into east side communities that have other arrangements with other programs.
To listen to the, like, what else do we?
Or the human
listen to
services
our
programs that they run, that they do.
Okay.
Nigel?
So I wouldn't characterize them as a North Seattle group at all. They're not involved in Seattle. They're Shoreline.
No, Shoreline, the northern part of the county, yes.
Right. And they're not offering human services directly. They're not competing with any of our human services provided. They're trying to act as kind of a hub, to be a place for people to have information, to know who to go to, that sort of thing. There really isn't anybody filling that role where we are. We're kind of off, Seattle has kind of that resource. The east side, Bellevue has that resource. North King County.
Which we're part of that Bellevue group.
Except what is the Bellevue group? I've never heard of anything that we're part of related to human services.
So they certainly help distribute.
Well, yeah, they hand out money. I'm talking about from a accessing perspective, from the user perspective, connecting people, doing that sort of work. We don't have any resource on those lines. I've gone to a couple of their meetings. I think that they probably have something to offer, and it wouldn't hurt for us to have a conversation with them at some point. They're going to be active in Kenmore, whether or not we decide to interact with them, but I think that they are trying to be a positive change in the community, and I think it's probably worth it for us to chat with them a bit.
I certainly don't have objections to chatting with them. The problem I have is they're also wanting money from us. And that's where I have issues when we're having financial problems ourselves, and people are there, especially with our contributions to our human services group that we already fund. I don't know that we need a dilution of our funds.
Well, I guess it sounds like we have, it's like looking at the elephant. We have different views of what this group does. I guess the ask then would be, would it be okay to invite them to formally invite them to a council meeting? Tell us who they are, tell us types of things that they worked on last year, things that they've gleaned, so that and if, I have never heard this, if they haven't asked for money, it would be nice to understand what that ask is about. So, just to have them present.
Milton?
I guess another option I was thinking of is have somebody from staff talk to them and see if it feels appropriate to even waste council time having meetings.
Yeah, I mean, in discussions I had with Rob, he was even where they were meeting in our city hall. So, I guess they've been around for quite a while. We have developed standards for human services and the money that we give to programs that directly affect Kenmore residents. And the more they affect Kenmore residents, the more supportive we are. So I guess I'm just leery.
I guess I would say if their focus has changed more toward homeless and affordability, that it might be a slightly different organization than it used to be. And I'd be at least interested in having somebody from staff talk to them and say, yes, it could be worthwhile for council to meet, or nope, it's not worth taking our time.
No, I agree. It's not that I don't want to hear from them.
Yeah.
I'm just being cautious.
Okay, other comments on this? So what I'm hearing is an ask that someone, either they come to you in a full city council meeting, or the alternative view is have staff reach out and talk to them a little bit, and then come to you and say, this is what we've learned, do you want to go further with it? So that's kind of the blend of ideas. I've heard people say, sure, let's hear from them. So do you want to have staff do the outreach, or do you want to just full on bring them into council? What's your pleasure?
I'm trying to do it down.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Okay, staff. All right, what you do there then, the staff will meet with them and kind of get the answers to those questions and then report back to you.
Hey, Nancy, do you have connections with them?
Kelly does.
Mhm.
All right, yeah, Kelly, if you could have them come talk to me and Nancy.
Yeah, and just if it's worth anything, given I do the human services, they have reached out to me and said, hey, we want a relationship with Kenmore and want you guys to be involved, and would you be the point person? I said, possibly. So we've made that connection with them already. So going forward.
They have approaches for funding.
Oh, they have.
Oh, yeah.
So they could go in the grant
Oh,
program
yeah.
like everybody else does.
Okay, so the plan is that staff will come back to you with kind of a report on
Sure.
what they're up to, what they do, and so on, and you can make a determination if there's a next step for you. Okay? All right, we're a little past 2:00, but it's time for a break. Let's get up and walk around after that.